Let's talk about one of the most important aspects and roles of a performance coach in professional sports. GPS monitoring, workload management, and optimization. So oftentimes you'll see professionals, performance professionals on the field carrying an iPad, a laptop in certain instances. What are we checking? We're looking at every step and every movement that our players take on. So we're looking at things like high-speed yardage, total number of accelerations and decelerations, and then within that we can actually look and quantify the intensity of both the high-speed yardage. We can look at specific speed zones and bands, and then we can look at the level of the intensity going into an acceleration or a deceleration. The cool thing about this, whether you're using a GPS monitoring software or you're using an RFID. So if you look at some of those next-gen stats live on Sundays in games, that's coming from a radio frequency chip that's actually wired inside the player's shoulder pads. It's communicating to these different bands throughout the stadium, and they're talking. They're really signaling. It's just like a radio would work, but they're signaling and tracking every single step that our athletes take. So what does that do for us? It allows us to track and to quantify the workload that our players are undertaking, both from a game and a practice perspective. Why is that important? Every load that our athletes undertake is critically important for us to evaluate, to monitor, and then try to optimize. Why are we looking at that? It's not just the reps and the sets in the weight room or on the practice field. It's how much distance they covered throughout the certain practice. It's how many yards they spent in high-speed yardage. Did you sprint for 200 yards or did you jog for 3,000 yards? Those two stimuluses are going to have very different outcomes for each athlete. Now, within each key position, we're going to look at skill position players, which are typically our wide receivers and our defensive backs. They're going to cover much more high-speed yardage, and they're going to be covering more total yardage on end than maybe our offensive line and defensive linemen do. So what do we do for those O linemen and D linemen? We're going to look at accelerations. We're going to look at decelerations. And we're going to dive into some of the things that we can also quantify from an intensity standpoint. And then we're going to communicate with the coaching staff, with our front office, and with the players themselves about how intense was practice. What do we need and what are we going to require throughout the next session so that we can optimally prepare them so that we can go into a game on a Sunday, on a Monday night, on a Thursday, and go compete to our best ability for the fans at home. One of the other critical components of this is making sure that we're trying to prevent as many injuries as possible. How do we do that? By tracking the cumulative load that our athletes have undertaken. We're in the middle of training camp. We're in sunny Southern California right now, so we have a mobile unit that's GPS based. We're using that unit to actually track every step that our players take so that we can prevent some of those low-hanging fruit injuries like the hamstrings, like the groins, like some of those soft tissue injuries that you talk about and you hear about. Those are the things that we're trying to prevent by making sure that we're in an optimal range of a load. If you run too far, too fast, too much intensity one day, how are we accommodating for that? We have to make adjustments, and we have to be willing to adapt so that our athletes can recover, regenerate, and go out there and perform at the next practice session or at the next game so that we can continue to optimize each individual player's performance.